Hello, I'm Kimberley Dondo, Digital Content Manager, and welcome to In Conversation With, the podcast series that delves into the world of financial services and brings you face to face with some of the most notable figures in the industry. Listen as we discuss topics that are currently facing the industry and hear from visionary CEOs to disruptive innovators as we bring you a diverse array of voices and perspectives. We'll explore the challenges they faced, the lessons they've learned, and the insights they have to share about the ever-evolving landscape of financial services. Hello and welcome to In Conversation With. I'm Kimberley Dondo, and in today's episode, I'm joined by Matt Storey, Head of Business Development from SIPP. So thank you for joining me today, Matt.
You're very welcome. It's great to be here, Kim.
So could you give us a bit of a background into yourself and how you got started in the industry?
Yeah. So I think I had a fairly non-standard entry into the financial services market. I went through my education thinking I would go into the armed forces. I actually wanted to join the Royal Air Force, become an officer, hopefully aircrew. And that's all I focused on through all my education, higher all the rest of it. And then, unfortunately, Mother Nature determined that, no, you don't have the medical for that. So I had to do a bit of a regroup, rethink, ended up working with Thomas Cook in travel, in fact. Did that from 03 until about 06. And I'm in central Scotland, in Falkirk, nearby Stirling, and one of the biggest employers in Stirling was Prudential. They've got a huge site there. So I actually left 06, went to join Prudential Financial Services, thinking, you know what, I might try to go to police or I might try RAF again. I'll have this as a backup. But I managed to make a success of it. Started getting involved from 06 with Pru and SIPP and SSAS to a degree. Heard about a firm nearby called Hazel Carr, and then had the opportunity to join Hazel Carr in 2010, which at that point had become Saventi. So that's why I was fully focused on SIPP and SSAS. And Saventi's now was XPS, so I was there from 2010 up until 2022. Initially in a sales support admin capacity, but moved into actually covering the southeast of the country and as sales role. So I was flying down to City and Gatwick and Stansted and meeting financial advisors. 2016, a little bit of change. Started covering the north of England, so the Manchester, Leeds area, the M62 stretch, in fact, all the way down to Birmingham. Did that up until 22. But I was always travelling down. I was always flying down on trains and driving down quite a long drive from central Scotland down to Manchester. And of course, we had COVID, we had lockdowns, everything moved to Teams and Zoom, did everything remotely. And once that started to ease, I went back on the road and realised I wasn't too keen on this long drive anymore. So an opportunity came along with SIPP based in Glasgow, covering Scotland. A few conversations were had, and I took the leap, joined them in September 22, and here we are over a year and a half later. It's been a great decision.
Yeah. I know that you said that it wasn't a standard way to kind of get into financial services, but I have yet to actually meet someone who has a quote unquote standard entry point. I don't think it exists.
So many advisors that I've met, and so many BDMs that have come from, I've got a sports background or other things, armed forces. In fact, many of them have left there and gone to become financial advisors. We've all come from a really kind of varied and rich background into our industry. And that's a good thing, in fact. I think we can absorb all those different backgrounds and fulfill our industry a bit better now because of it.
I know. I feel like I'm such a pusher in a way, because whenever I speak to someone who's having second thoughts about their career, I'm always like, this is great profession. I hear about cool financial advice or look into financial services. There's just so much you can do. But anyway, you mentioned SSAS a little bit earlier, which we have basically decided is that how you pronounce the acronym for self-administrated schemes. Let's jump into the impact of the DWP levy on SSAS and how it's become kind of a hot topic. So can you walk us through how this might play out for financial advisors and their clients?
I'm really glad to talk about this because when it first got announced last year, DWP obviously said, right, we're going to look at the general levy on occupational schemes. We're going to make a few changes there. We had a consultation, and it was 3 options that were presented. Option 1, I think it was more of a status quo. Option 2, a bit more. And option 3, what we can all describe as the nuclear option. Or certainly that's us in the self-administered space, the member directed scheme space, looking at that, saying that's definitely a nuclear option. And it was going to be 4 schemes where the membership is 10,000 members or less. There would be an amount of £10,000 being applied. Now, SSAS, small self-administered schemes, are limited to a maximum of 11 members. So automatically, you've included this entire industry in scope for this change, and it would have been, nuclear. Absolutely. At the time when it was announced, there were a lot of commentators in the market, but I was commentating about it. Everyone was out there making various things and posts on LinkedIn, all very worried about what could happen to the future of SSAS. And of course, there was nothing really said further from DWP. The consultation ended in November last year. And it wasn't until start of March this year, that finally we got through more on this. And thankfully, it was that, okay, we're going for option 2, which I believe is an increase of the levy to 6.5%. So, hallelujah, there's now no impact to SSAS. And the funny thing is that I kind of laughed in a way. I'm still laughing about it now, because at no point to the initial comms in DWP last year, and then the clarification of what's happening, what option they're going for this year, at no point did they ever mention SSAS. We kind of made that mountain out of a molehill in many ways in our industry, but I always thought it was going to be fine. I always thought this won't be an issue for us. The reality is that it's because SSAS is already doing much of what I think the government's ambition is for pension schemes in the UK market. It's quite clear that the government would like to have more streamlined, better run, and less pension schemes out there. A group of smaller, better run master trusts. You're kind of making your pension industry and more analogous to other countries like Australia. And I think not long ago, actually, the UK government were speaking to the Australians about their pension industry and how they could try and move into that. And speaking to various people in the industry over the last few months, I was talking to Tom McPhail not long ago, and he was mentioning about how this ambition for how the UK pension industry will try and move into that. And it's more so that government can actually access this multi-billion-pound industry, access the funds there to put into infrastructure, to put into business, to the economy. Well, if you think about what SSAS is, just going back to that point for a second, what it does, we've been around with SSAS since the early 70s. And SSAS, of course, is self-investment. So you can invest into commercial property. Well, there's your infrastructure. You can invest into business through loan back. Well, there's your economy, SME investments. Now, this productive finance thing that the government wants to look at, well, we've been doing that since the 1970s already. We already meet those kind of objectives. So that's why I've always thought that it would never happen. They would never look at option 3. We'll come out of this one fine, because we are doing this productive finance piece very well, in my view, for a long, long time, and hopefully for a long time to come as well.
Yeah. It seems like the best solution, especially if they want to look into more UK investments. It seems to make the most sense. Yeah. And looking into non-standard assets in SIPPs. So traditionally, SIPPs haven't embraced non-standard assets. Do you believe their time is coming to an end?
I think the time has already ended in many ways. And I say that with a sense of melancholy about it, because, I've been around SIPP and SSAS for a long time. And when I first started getting kind of fully focused on SIPP market, it was about 2010, as I mentioned before. So it's a pre-RDR world, right? I always feels kind of looking back, I don't mean saying disrespect to the advice I remain, but it almost felt like the Wild West sometimes pre-RDR. So RDR did a lot to kind of clean up our industry. But back then, there was a lot of non-standard stuff going around. I remember that you'd probably be taking as many phone calls and inquiries about someone investing into a private company through unlisted share purchase or unquoted share purchase using a SIPP, as you would for someone saying they want to invest into property or indeed something unregulated. It was quite prevalent at that time, those kind of assets. But this was true self-investment, bear in mind. When in 1987, we had the rules changed so that SIPPs could be created. It was all about true entrepreneurial investment into a whole range of different asset subtypes. And unfortunately, over the following 20, 25 years, that has been open, dare I say, to an element of abuse. So we have had, unfortunately, a lot of problematic assets. And certainly RDR cleaned up a lot of the bad actors that were funneling client monies into this. And then we had, of course, CapAd coming in 2016, capital adequacy rules. So that being for SIPP providers, looking at how they are functioning, how much money they hold in reserve. Because capital adequacy for us, the amount of money we have to hold in reserve is linked to standard assets and non-standard assets, in that if you operate a portfolio of client assets, look at how much that's non-standard. That's going to influence how much capital adequacy you need to hold, which means, of course, if you've got a larger exposure, you might have a higher CapAd amount. That's going to create potential logistical financial problems for a business. So I think that RDR cleaned the industry for advisors. CapAd then cleaned up the providers to look at what they can't accept. And also, over the teams, we had Harlequin Properties and Store Paws and various other things, and tree plantations in Cambodia and all kinds of weird, wacky, wonderful, esoteric stuff. A lot of which clients chased after thinking we can get great returns, and unfortunately lost a lot of money. So, when we look at how the industry has evolved over the last decade, especially with non-standards, where we are now is probably the best place, because look, we're now approaching a year since Consumer Duty came into force, which has been fantastic for the entire financial services industry, in my view. So for SIPP providers, made us have to think and focus on good outcomes for clients. That has to say, well, what are you doing to protect your clients against the risks of these types of assets? It was back in 2015, actually, I was saying that we we're going to move to simply, right, one side is going to be property and pensions, or the other side is going to be certainly in the bespoke part of the market, where we are just DFM and low-cost wrap or general investment accounts, wrap tip, that kind of thing. All this non-standard stuff will flow away. As at the start of this, I do feel sad about that in a way, because we have lost that true element of self-investment. But the reality is that this is the best outcome. This is the best form of evolution for our industry in terms of protecting client assets. Keeping in mind that what we work with SIPP and SSAS, what we are working with clients is their pension fund, is their future. And it's always really important that we just keep that in mind, that this is one of the most important things they have: home, family, pension, future,
Mm-hmm. And you spoke a little bit about niche investments. So I wondered if something like cryptocurrencies could be something that's mainstream in SIPPs in the future. There was a massive crypto boom, obviously, during the pandemic when everyone was at home, and so many terrible coins were being sold. They were just rug pulls, people trying to get money from people. But is there a possibility in which more legitimate coins or cryptocurrencies?
I do believe that over the coming decades, crypto will become a mainstream form of currency across the world.
Okay.
Or some form of variation of that, maybe an evolution of dollar, pound, etc. Will form something into crypto. It's got to be the future in a way. Where we are now, we don't have the regulatory control over it. And that's the problem here, right? I don't believe, as it is right now, it can work, because how can you make it work without the control and regulation? It's certainly in the future, but we're probably 15, 20 years before we get to that point, I would suspect. But it has to be something that's looked at further down the track as it becomes more mainstream and we have more control, more ability to protect client assets, because that's the crux of this. As it is right now, crypto is very popular. If I remember reading recently that Bitcoin is at almost record levels, $57,000 per coin, something like that. I mean, it's an incredible amount of money, right? So yes, it has to be the future. But right now, as we currently stand, how can you ensure that a client's fund of, say, £400,000 is going to go into a hold of crypto? How can you safeguard that now in the coming months in the future? You just can't really. Therefore, I think the risk is too great as it is. There needs to be a bit more of an evolution there in that market before we can accept it as mainstream.
Yeah. I'm still a bit of a skeptic when it comes to crypto. I think I just saw too many bad actors in that field. So right now, I guess waiting for that regulation piece is the most important part.
Yeah. We know that you could type Bitcoin into or crypto into Google right now, and you'll probably find the top stories coming back that is it Sam. Can't remember his full name, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, the one who's basically in jail for the rest of his life.
Exactly right, and that's part of the issue. But it's also the reputational issues it has right now. I think clients will see that and go, "Hang on a minute, let's be a bit more cautious about this." So it needs to get away from that, get more control, get more mainstream, get more safety, and then have some reputable establishments and institutions controlling it a bit better.
Mm-hmm. And pivoting onto property when it comes to pensions, I know that it can be a valuable asset class. So what do you think why do you think it's not currently being utilized within SIPPs? And are there any regulatory hurdles or practical challenges advisors should be aware of?
Well, I mean, this regulatory wise, this is a standard investment. Let's keep that in mind. And actually, investment into property through pension schemes it's been around for a long time, of course, through SSAS. Some of the big ticket pension schemes will buy large scale property out there. All we're doing is accessing those rules through SIPP now. For many advisors, the only time they really see property and pension, be it SIPP or SSAS, is when they're perhaps doing RO4. I remember when I did the RO4, it's one page. I think I had one exam question and that's it. And then you go on to your trainee planner in a firm, and you work your way up. You do general products. You might do some platform stuff there. When you're going to look at SIPP, could be years down the track. And then someone says, "I want to look at commercial property and pension." And then you'll automatically think, not sure about that. And you might want to flow away from it. So from my perspective, I always tend to think that there's a kind of an educational piece for me in how I talk to advisors about this is definitely an option. Everyone will know you can put property into pension, be it SIPP or SSAS, right? All advisors will know that. They just haven't had the chance to get involved there. And the reality is, well, that setting up a SIPP and buying a property is much more complex than that client, setting up a platform, putting funds into a suite of assets. It's much more involved. But actually, I mean, saying that, there's a kind of a misconception that the advisor is going to have to do all that work. No, actually, it's the provider that's doing the work. Actually, yesterday I was at a meeting in Glasgow with an advisor I've known for a while, and he was saying, "Look, Matt, I don't get involved in this. Just don't get involved in it, right? Can you help with it?" That's the reality. Because advisors don't have the exposure to it, rightly or wrongly, they just don't get the experience, and therefore there's, dare I say, a lack of confidence in how can I do it. That then, to me, means, well, actually, it's down to the provider, certainly the distribution teams or the BDMs, to make sure that we are giving enough support and demonstrating enough that actually we as providers can do this. I also find that some advisors may have done a SIPP with property in the past, but had a bad experience. And that bad experience could be that they've gone and set up that SIPP and thought the provider was going to do all the work, but realised actually the service wasn't quite there. They got more involved with it. Because they're getting more involved, there's more time. And there's more time, then they'll spend less time on other clients. And there's a logistical or financial implication for them as a business. Because ultimately, we're all, be it providers or financial advisors, we're all in business. We have to ensure our business is robust and profitable. We don't want to be running at a loss, and ensuring good outcomes for clients, especially consumer duty. So that then puts more, again, emphasis on providers providing the right kind of technical support at outset. And when you have that, when you get that sorted, then you find you get a group of advisors and supporting advisors who will come back time and time again because they have now got the confidence in that. So, yeah, I mean, there certainly can be more property and pensions, absolutely. I think that if advisors embrace it a bit more and have the right support, then yeah, we can get to that objective or get to that end goal of like, we'll see it more growth in this part of the market.
Mm-hmm. And we are living in the future now in the way that AI is everywhere. There seems to be an AI solution for pretty much everything at this point. And it's whether certain industries are going to embrace it or not. So can AI realistically be used as a tool for advisors to compare and choose the most suitable SIPP for their clients? And again, is there a regulatory element there that we have to consider? Because obviously, if you're the potential of putting, your client's information in there, is there something there?
I think so. AI, of course, it's been around for a few years now, right? We've heard about it more recently,
Yeah.
but it has been around for a few years. It's just more in the last, 18 months or so, the development cycle of AI and how it's performed has been exponential in its growth, which is the scary part of it. I'm a child of the 80s and 90s PlayStation generation, so I'm fairly embracing of old technology. Albeit I hear AI and sometimes I think of Terminator 2, Judgment Day.
I recently watched The Matrix and
well,
I was like, oh, maybe I need to step back from AI. It's learning too much for me.
So I wasn't like skeptical of it at first. I went to a meeting with a chap nearby, really great advisor who said, Matt, you've got to see this. This is absolutely fantastic. I thought, okay, good kind of right smile on my face. And it was actually right after Jeremy Hunt had said it in the budget, and we had the jaw-dropping moment of there is LTA being abolished. My goodness. And this advisor said, right, watch this. This is great. He set the temperature, all the lingo I'm getting here, okay? Set the temperature right and got all those settings right and said, show me a summary of the key points on the back end of the LTA abolished. And I kind of thought, okay, right, let's see what happens here. 15, 20 seconds later, it spat out this great big long section of paragraphs and bullet points. And I thought, my goodness, it was spot on, and I was absolutely dumbfounded by it. He did another one and I was dumbfounded again. So I went away thinking, that's something. That really is something. So I went home and I thought, I'm going to play with this. So I played with a few things on it and asked it about SaaS. And it came back with a kind of a standard paragraph, all this kind of stuff. And I thought, wow, that's pretty good. So I then asked a variation of the question about SaaS loan back and how I've used the loan back for, something like that. And it came back with the same answer. And this is the problem that I kind of have with AI in our part of the market. Because AI, as I understand it anyway, I mean, it's learning by a kind of similar process to human beings. So how you and I would learn, in that we read, we see, we hear things, we assimilate information. Using more sci-fi references here, but taking information in and then we form our own opinions off that and play it back out as our professional views and stuff. And that's what AI is doing. It's only as good as the information it's seeing. So is it limited by the fact that because in the SIPP and the SaaS world, we're in a pretty complex part of the market? Right now, I'm talking about the bespoke part of the market here, where you've got that property and pension piece and the SaaS with the different rules around that. Will AI be able to delve into that as cleanly as it should be? Right now, I'm not convinced. Now, that doesn't mean to say that will always be the case. I imagine that as we have this, again, exponential growth in its development cycle, it could be that in a few years' time, AI is completely taken over, ability to look at things. It's really quite interesting to watch. But something I do always think with this is that the human touch in this is always going to be valued, because the target market for bespoke SIPP and SaaS always tends to be high net worth clients, SMEs, more involved stuff. And having that ability to be involved in that process, I think is really important. Advisors value that, okay, they can use AI for some lower level elements of what they're doing in their space. But when it comes to the intricate stuff, the really detailed stuff, you need to have the reliance of a human being you can speak to and meet with and talk to about these things. So there are elements of practicality for it, and it can certainly evolve and become more practical and usable in some other areas. But I think we have to have some control over it. And back to your point on regulation of it, absolutely, right? Because if we're putting client information into AI, how is that then being controlled? Where's that information going? Because AI is not being set up by particular businesses. It's usually third party. It's usually like you have the various like Google and others out there. So you're giving the information to them. And how are they using that information? So there could be some considerations there, I think, as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it was I read somewhere that it's not until 2050 that AI will be essentially at the same level as like a human brain in terms of able to comprehend and make decisions.
Yeah.
And then we'll more be worried about whether they see us as like a pest or a pet. So hopefully the AI will want to look after us as opposed to be like,
I very much hope so. Otherwise, Judgment Day again. Yeah. Okay.
But coming back to SIPPs, what do you see the future of SIPPs being? The market has grown significantly. What predictions for its growth trajectory do you see in the next 5 years? And what are the biggest opportunities that you see?
So the market itself is quite a big market. We've got about 5 million SIPP members. We have 500 billion of assets as it is now. And that's 3 times the size of the master trust market. It's a huge, huge market. Now, the majority of that, of course, is the platform space. And I think it's about 2/3 of the market is also that D2C basis, so direct clients, non-advised. So the lion's share, of course, is in the likes of Hargreaves and AJ Bell and various other large platforms out there. The market I represent, if you will, is about 20% of that bespoke space. The overall market, yes, it will grow. I read a report from John Morey not long ago where he was suggesting up to 750 billion, so 50% growth in 5 years. Again, that will probably be in one platform space, but looking at our space, we have got recovering economy. Thankfully, we've got COVID firmly in the rearview mirror, and hopefully the other issues out in the world will soon be in the rearview mirror as well, and be even more recovery in our UK economy. And that just means more opportunity, I think, for business. And we look at that, especially in our space. I'm looking at how property investment will always be something which is robust for business, as well as SSAS with their support there and loan back facility. So I do see that there's going to be strong growth in the property and pension business. And from my perspective, in the last 12 months, it's been a fantastic year for us. Again, property and pension being a key area of growth that will continue. This again is as a long-standing and standard investment vehicle. Should be definitely considered by every planner out there because of its tax efficiency and the way it can support business. So I see it being a strong area of growth.
Yeah. But apart from that, thank you so much for speaking with me today, Matt. That was a really interesting talk.
Been really enjoyable. Thanks, Kim.
Thank you for listening to In Conversation With. We do hope that you enjoyed it. Please do keep up to date with all our new releases via Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere else you get your podcasts from. You can also keep up to date with all our new content published on the Money Marketing website, as well as our print edition Money Marketing magazine. So make sure to subscribe. Follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. See you next time.